When CM Punk cut a promo proclaiming how he was the best in that ring, on that microphone, and even on commentary, he redefined both his career and a generation of WWE mid-card malaise. But he did so with laser-focused intent. On what was supposed to be one of his last ever appearances on Raw, Punk was allegedly given a free pass by Vince McMahon to air all his grievances. He did it so well that it triggered further negotiations on both sides. The words in his now infamous pipe bomb were intended to cause explosions, but there's often been even greater power behind otherwise innocuous statements. Wrestlers have to pull their inspiration from somewhere after all, and the weight of the words sometimes isn't realized until after they've left their mouths. My name is Adam Cleary, and these are 10 wrestling promos that were inadvertently famous. Number 10, the Forgotten Pipe Bomb. If interviews with GQ and the curious glances of the mainstream media were to be believed, Money in the Bank 2011 was a watershed moment. CM Punk did indeed drop a pipe bomb that night, and WWE defusing it within weeks remains one of their most heartbreaking blunders. Fast forward to the 2013 Royal Rumble, and looking gaunt, tired, and with the weight of all that expectation still on his shoulders, Punk took to the ring to hype up his upcoming match with The Rock. 20 days before they would take his title to beef up the Dwayne Cena sequel, look at the sadness in that man's eyes. Though still some 12 months away from his departure, he verbally flails as if given the same freedom he was years earlier. The mistreated Tyson Kidd, Daniel Bryan, and Brodus Clay all get a shout out, and by WWE standards, the fans are only castigated as a means to criticize the company. "You do not get to win," yelled Punk to the audience, and sadly, he may as well have been screaming that into a mirror. Number 9, everyone screwed Bret. Bret Hart's excellent execution didn't usually extend to his elocution until his 1997 heel turn. There, and though still guilty of crimes against banter from time to time, he magnificently worked through his personal and professional gripes via the filter of his anti-American villain. Either side of the seminal WrestleMania 13 brawl with Stone Cold Steve Austin, Bret cut arguably the finest 2 promos of his career. One would foreshadow his heel turn while the other cemented it, but the initial rant carried remarkable gravitas 6 months later. He raged on Shawn Michaels, raged on Vince McMahon, and raged on the entire organization for being screwed out of the WWE title. Now yes, it was important to cast him as this embittered star ahead of the Austin clash, but the iconic explosion fed directly into McMahon's post-Montreal narrative. Number 8, Cornette ends the madness. Jim Cornette's late 1997 Monday Night Raw rants were many things, but hardly anyone telegraphed that they were actually setting up an anti-Attitude Era angle before we even really had an Attitude Era. The NWA invasion he was setting up ultimately hit the wall pretty quickly. Ill-conceived and badly executed, the Old Guard performers were certainly heels in the story, but only in so much as everybody wanted them to f*** off rather than get over. Although it was definitely built by the right man, it was the wrong heat. His closing address on the whole thing, though, didn't raise too many eyebrows at the time. He said that the state of wrestling was disgusting and that nobody had respect for wrestling anymore. Not sports entertainment, but wrestling. Back then, everybody pretty much just shrugged their shoulders and went, yeah, okay, Jim, but this is pretty much his exact shtick here in 2019, as well as the through lines of every single podcast and public appearance. Cornette telling the world exactly how he felt 22 years ago, and weirdly, it was already kind of out of date then. Number 7, bad lucha things. There are a lot of cases of single promos making a career in a moment, but thankfully much fewer that do the polar opposite. Kalisto is perhaps the leader of this inadvertently elite club after the live microphone he was afforded in 2016 morphed into a machine gun that then riddled his main roster run with bullet holes. Not everyone can be as gifted on the mic as, well, me, but all Kalisto had to do was say that he was excited to be on SmackDown and keen to take on Baron Corbin. What emerged from his inexperienced head was, make a good lucha thing before darting out of shot. WWE, ever the purveyors of high banter, even added it to their front of house presentation of him, naming a dubstep reimagining of his entrance music, make a good lucha thing. That is never ever going away. Number 6, Kings and Queens. Frightening hatred flew down the lens from the eyes of Jerry Lawler and into the souls of the WWE audience as he ripped into Goldust ahead of King of the Ring 97. Hopefully, he was just entering some kind of god-level performance territory, because the alternative is beyond the pale. Referring to the bizarre one first as our sissy friend, things then escalated. He called him a flaming fag, his wife Terry Runnels the biggest gold digger in all of Georgia, and then closed up by saying their daughter Dakota should have been called Target because he'd heard everyone in Atlanta had had a shot at her. Goldust's babyface turn had opened the door for heels such as Lawler to grasp at the low-hanging fruit of the gimmick. But nonetheless, it makes for shocking viewing on the WWE Network today. It remains one of the most problematic promos in the show's entire history, with the language regrettable then, let alone over 20 years later. Number 5. Stifled Savage. Vince McMahon looked and presumably felt genuinely devastated to report the news on November 7th, 1994 that regular broadcast partner Randy Savage was not only absent from the show, but gone from his company for good, jumping, as he had, to WCW. Forging ahead with a muddled new generation youth movement, McMahon believed Randy was past his prime as a performer, but capable as one of the voices of his show. A prideful Macho Man disagreed, and astonishingly said as much during his last ever broadcast on the show. After being calmed down by McMahon following a physical involvement in a Lex Luger-Bob Backlund clash earlier in the night, a hassled Savage noted with frustration that the hardest part of the job is sitting in this chair. I'm tired of sitting. The man had talked thousands into buildings over the years, but this was perhaps his most poignant mini promo. Number 4. Truth to Power. Did Neville have one foot out of the door of WWE before he thrust his other one straight into the chest of Enzo Amore? Now, yes, that's impossible to speculate on, and I'm way too scared to ask him at Defiant shows, but the fact he left just a few weeks later suggests maybe? Amore was cast as the bothersome Burke of the lightweight division. Though utterly devoid of in-ring talent compared to his contemporaries, he brought with him a WWE superstar quality the rest of the division sadly lacked. Well, all of them except Neville. As a walking, talking avatar of Vince McMahon's disdain for the brand, the undeserving Enzo was in need of a beating. But for all that Enzo had no business sharing a ring with him, his point that in the 9 months Neville had held the title, the Cruiserweights had never been anywhere near the last hour of Raw until he showed up, was probably the exact realization he needed to walk out of the company. Number 3, he's done everything. Just a quick heads up for Satan himself to whack the thermostat up a bit as I'm about to praise JBL. At the climax of Chris Benoit vs MVP's WrestleMania 23 US title war, he put the crippler over beautifully. Tragically though, it was the manner in which he celebrated the life of Benoit that made it such difficult listening just 3 months later. Michael, there are not enough superlatives to describe Chris Benoit. He's done everything in this business. He's going in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the greatest of all time. Congratulations, Chris. Another WrestleMania moment, and you deserve every damn bit of it. In putting over the champion like this, he was subtly praising the challenger's losing effort to bolster another future shot down the line. This was a rare example of him doing his job absolutely brilliantly to help service a feud for 2 other wrestlers, but sadly history will remember it only as a tragic epitaph. Number 2, give AJ Lee a chance. AJ Lee's own take on CM Punk's pipe bomb was arguably the true start of a revolution for women's wrestling. And if it wasn't, her tweet several months later commanding fairer pay definitely was. The match that preceded this promo was a perfect example of WWE's women equals piss break philosophy. Brie Bella was celebrating a very short, ill-gotten victory over Natalya in a battle designed to do nothing but promote Total Divas. Thirsty for the quality action they now receive, fans immediately chanted and cheered for AJ as she ripped into the cheap, interchangeable, expendable women who have turned to reality television because they just weren't gifted enough to be actresses. Devoid of all crack as per usual, the Bellas refused to actually allow her the spotlight and hollered at AJ to say it to their faces, as if she wasn't literally doing that already. They, like WWE itself, had absolutely no comeback for a single word she said. Number 1, the ultimate goodbye. Now, Ultimate Warrior didn't exactly look a picture of health on the post-WrestleMania 30 edition of Monday Night Raw, but the promo he cut before his untimely death the very next day spoke in rather too much detail about his eventual demise. There's a significantly spooky subtext to it all, particularly when he refers directly to every man's heart beating its final beat and lungs breathing their final breath. Now yes, this probably was an effort to fuse together his legacy with the legions of WWE fans old and new, but watching it back now, it's impossible not to think he knew. He looks genuinely exhausted as he notes that the spirit of the Ultimate Warrior will run forever. Regardless of the man's beliefs or the occasional ugly sentiments he shared, the heartbreaking loss to his wife and children of their husband and father was the saddest end to an uplifting weekend of reconciliation. He was eulogized heavily and admittedly controversially in the aftermath, but just as he did with his life, few pontificated on his passing better than the man himself. So there you have it, those are 10 WWE promos that were inadvertently famous. Why not revisit this voiceover in about 6 months' time to see what I was really trying to tell you? Anyway, though, let us know what you made of it in the comments below, and of course, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, though, I have, of course, been Adam Cleary, and I'll see you soon.